Don't forget to like and subscribe to Jolie Knots Crochet. Share with your friends. Hit that little notification bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our videos are available in left and right-handed tutorials.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal and today we are going to be making this Batwing sweater. Now this sweater is worked up in one piece. We are going to be making the band first, working up with V-stitches, increasing, and then we're going to stop our increase to create our armholes. Once we do that, we'll sew up the sides and leaving a neck hole, and then we'll work on the ribbing for our arms. All right, everybody, this yarn is comfy cotton, and I am absolutely in love with it. Very, very cozy. The size that we're making today for this one is an extra large, so it is oversized. You can customize the length. You can do some longer repeats. You can also customize your sleeve length where you can do some extra increasing to get to your sleeves. Okay, so the yarn that we're using for this project is Lion's Brand Comfy Cotton Blend. This is a 7-ounce skein with 392 yards. It's a light 3-weight. The color I'm using today is Ocean Breeze, and it is a 50% cotton, 50% polyester blend. Now I used 3 skeins of this for an extra large size. We'll be using a 5 and a 6mm hook for this project. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to start with our 5mm hook for our ribbing. We are going to get a slip knot and we're going to chain 13, so that way we have 12 single crochets. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Into the second chain from your hook, we're going to single crochet. We're going to single crochet into every chain space all the way down, and you should have 12 single crochets. If you want your band wider or thinner, feel free to plus or minus stitches for your band. Okay, this next row is going to be your repeat row. So you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and we're going to single crochet through both loops of your first stitch and through the back loop only of your next 10 stitches. So we'll have 12. Our first and our last stitch will be through both loops. In my opinion, that makes a cleaner edge. If you like it differently and you want to go through the back loop of every stitch, that's not a problem. You can do it the way that you like it. On to the next row. Repeat row 2. Okay, I've just completed my band to go around my waist. I am making a size extra large for this tutorial. You're going to have 144 rows for an extra large. Now, if you're going to go down a size, you are going to subtract 8 rows per size. So, for example, if you're doing a large size, 144 minus 8 is 136. A medium, 128. A small, 120. Extra small, 112. If you're going higher than an extra large from 144, then you're going to add 8. So a 2x would be 152. A 3x would be 160. a 4x 168, a 5x 174. Check the description box below for all of your sizing in your band. The rest of the pattern is not really going to matter because you're just going to do it to the length that you want your sweater. So what we're going to do now is we're going to slip stitch our pieces together. I'm going to take one end, bring it with the other end. For our first stitch, we're going to go through both stitches just like usual, and then through the first chain, and we will slip stitch that. All right, your next 10 stitches will be in the back loop only. When we get to our last stitch, we'll go through both loops and chain one. Now this is going to be the inside of our band. So now we're going to flip it inside. Turn your band over so that you're in a good working position. All right, now that we have completed our band, we're going to switch from our 5mm hook and we're going to use our 6mm hook. Okay, so into the side of every row here, we're going to put 1/2 double crochet. Now because I have 144 rows, I should have 144 half double crochets. So you put 1/2 double crochet into the side of every one of your rows, and I'll meet you back at the beginning. Here I am at the end of my first round. I went ahead and slip stitch to begin. Now I'm going to chain 2. Into the same stitch that I slip stitched into, I'm going to put a V-stitch. That's double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Skipping 1 stitch and into the next, I'm going to put another V-stitch. Skip 1, V-stitch into the next. Skip 1, V-stitch into the next. Do that all the way around into the beginning, and I'll meet you right back here. All right, here we are at the end. We're going to slip stitch to the first double crochet of our V-stitch, and then we'll slip stitch to the middle. Now we're going to put a V-stitch all the way around your sweater for 8 more rounds. So we'll have 9 rounds total of V-stitches, and then we're going to start our increase. Now you can choose to do your V-stitches by chaining 4 and double crocheting into the first stitch, or you can do the chain 2 and then double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Depends on what you like and how you like to start and end your rounds, but I want you to have 9 rounds of V-stitches all the way around, and then I'll teach you how to start your increasing.
Now, if you're making a long sleeve, you're going to skip ahead to your increase rounds, and you'll begin your increase rounds now. This sweater I'm making is to be just below my elbows, so I'm having my first 9 rows without an increase.
All right, here I am at the end of my 9th round. Your work should look like it's curving. Even if we open it, it could be a circle. So what we're going to do next is this is where we're going to start our increases. You're going to take your stitch marker. Because I started with 72 V-stitches, I'm going to have 36 V-stitches on the front and 36 V-stitches on the back. So what I've done is I've counted over 36 V-stitches and I've put my stitch marker so that way I know where my 36 ends and then where my back 36 starts. So the way that we are going to start increasing on this round, we're going to increase 1 V-stitch between these 2 V-stitches. So instead of slip stitching into the middle of this V-stitch, we're just going to put a V-stitch right into the middle spot right there between our 2 V-stitches. Now we'll V-stitch just like normal all the way up. You'll work that all the way around to the other side, and when you get to your stitch marker, this is where you will increase 1 more V-stitch. So you'll work a V-stitch, add 1 extra V-stitch here, and then continue your 1 V-stitches on top of every V-stitch. And I will meet you back at the end of the round where you work your last V-stitch into here, slip stitch into the top, and I will teach you how to increase again. Okay, here we are at the end of our row. We're going to go ahead and slip stitch to our 3rd chain. All right, so we're going to take our next stitch marker and we're going to pop it just right there. And it's just going to help us keep on track. Now I know we're going to move this stitch marker right away, okay, but what we want to do is we want to keep track of exactly where our center stitch is. So in this round, our 1 increase is going to be on this side and this side. So we're not going to work into this V-stitch. We're going to work a V-stitch here and a V-stitch here. So this 1 V-stitch is turning into 2. 2, 3, 4, double crochet, and now skip the V-stitch, and in between this V-stitch and the next V-stitch, we're going to put our next one. And that's how we're increasing for round 11. So take your stitch marker, move it up, and this is now right here the middle of your work for this side. Okay, now you're going to V-stitch on top of the next V-stitch and on top of every single V-stitch until you get up to your next stitch marker. So you'll do that all the way down. This is the one that you'll skip, and you'll work a V-stitch here and a V-stitch here, and you'll increase that 1 V-stitch to 2, 1 on each side. So remember, we're increasing 1 V-stitch per side in every row now, but 2 V-stitch for the entire round. I hope that makes sense. So continue working back around. When you get to the beginning here, you will slip stitch to the top of your 3rd chain, place your first V-stitch. This is where your increase will be. Okay, so here I am at the end of my last increase round. I did 16 rounds of increasing. Okay, so remember I told you earlier that because of our increasing, your slip stitches are going to start moving out. All right, so once we get here, we're going to snip our yarn, tie that off, and now for our arms, what we're going to do is tie on a new yarn right at our stitch marker, and we're going to be working back and forth. Okay, so here's my new piece of yarn, and right into the first stitch on one side, I'm going to put a double crochet. Now I'm going to work V-stitches all the way across until I get to the other side. Now once I've gotten to my last V-stitch, I'm going to yarn over and just double crochet right in between my next V-stitch and the V-stitch. Double crochet right in between the two V-stitches. Now I'll chain 3, turn my work, and then V-stitch right into the V-stitch below. I'm going to go back and forth just like this
until I get the length for my sweater as well as the opening large enough for my armholes. Now for my size extra large, and because I just went till right below where my elbow ends, I went 10 rows back and forth on each side.
Okay, so here we are. I have completed where my armholes will be, working not in rounds, but just in back and forth. So now what we're going to do is we are going to sew up part of the top so that we can leave space for our neck hole. Now if you're making a size small or extra small, you're going to make your neck hole about 9 or 10 inches, depending on how wide you would like yours. I'm making an extra large, so I'm going to go about 12 inches straight from the middle here. Okay, so to measure it, I have found my center V-stitch, and I'm going to measure my 12 inches out from here. Okay, each one of these blocks are 1 inch. So I'm going to put that right in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. This is where I am going to move my stitch marker, making sure that I have the same amount of V's on the front and the back. So I will take one stitch marker and put it through both sides there, so that way when I sew it up I know exactly where I want to stop. Now if you're doing a larger size than the extra large, then go the width that you want, maybe 13 inches. So making sure that your work is inside out so that we sew on the inside, okay? I have got my one long piece. Make sure you leave a long piece so that you can sew your ends in. Okay, so I'm going to sew mine up with my tapestry needle. If you prefer to slip stitch, that's not a problem. You can go ahead and do that. And the way that I'm going to do mine is I'm just going to go through my 2 top loops and then through on the other side. Okay, coming back around through my 2 top loops, through my 2 loops on the other side. And you're just going to work that all the way to your stitch marker. Just going over and around, not pulling it too tight because I don't want it to squish up together. And you're just going to work that all the way down to your stitch marker, and then you'll repeat the same thing on the other side. So go ahead and finish that, and then I will meet you back to show you how to work the sleeves or the cuffs for our arms. Now you don't need to have a cuff. I personally would like to pull my sleeves up and them stay. I did make one of these before without cuffs. This is how I left. This is the one I made previously, and I left it just like this but I would like to pull them up if I want to, because I did make these sleeves longer and I want them to be able to stay on my arm. So I'm going to make a cuff, but feel free to not make a cuff if you don't want to. So finish up sewing yours and I'll meet you right back. Okay, now we're going to get started on our cuffs. I've already finished sewing up the top of my seams and leaving a hole for my neck. I have completed one sleeve already so that I can show you exactly what we're going to do here. The way we're going to work this is we're going to start at your armpit hole and work our way back and forth, but attaching the yarn every time we come back. So we're not going to make this a separate piece and sew it on. We're going to do it all in one piece. That's my favorite way to do it. All right. So we are going to take a slip knot, find the middle of your armpit, and right between where your arm is split, we're just going to join that up with a slip stitch. Okay, now you're going to chain 11.
Our band is going to be 10 stitches wide.
If you want it to be wider, feel free to make it wider. If you want it shorter, feel free to make it shorter. I like all my patterns to be customizable so you can make your changes. All right, we're going to single crochet into the second chain from the hook and then single crochet into the remaining 9 chains. You should have 10 single crochets. And 10. Now once you have your 10th chain, you're going to find your first double crochet and you're going to put a slip stitch. Alright, now you're going to chain 1, turn your work into the back loop only of our stitches. We are going to single crochet all the way down the line, and then when you get to your last stitch, you'll single crochet through both loops. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then your 10th one through both stitches. Chain 1, turn your work, both stitches, single crochet, and then back loop only into the next 9 stitches. Here I am at my last stitch. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find, so make sure that you're counting your 10 so that you don't miss that stitch accidentally. It gets a little hidden sometimes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find our next double crochet, which is your chain 3. So it's a chain 3 or a double crochet, and you're going to slip stitch into that space. Chain 1, flip your cuff over, and repeat that row, single crocheting into the back loop only of your first 9 stitches, and then both loops of your last stitch. Now you can do, like I said with the bottom band, you can do it through one loop if you want. I just happen to like the edging cleaner when I do it through both loops. All right, so you're just going to continue that, moving up
Okay, so when you get to the end, remember to move up a double crochet and slip stitch into there, chain one, and then turn your work. So you should have 2 rows per double crochet. All right, so we've worked our way this way, that's 1 row, slip stitch, worked our way that way. When we work our way back, we'll slip stitch into the next double crochet. So you'll have 2 double crochet. So like I said, you'll have 2 rows for your cuff per row of V-stitches attaching to your double crochets. Go ahead and work that all the way around, and I'll meet you back so we can slip stitch it up together. All right, we've just finished up the last row. I've already got my last double crochet attached. Now I've come back around and I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch right into the same space that we started. Okay, now I'm gonna fold my work together and we're gonna slip stitch it just like we did the band. So we're gonna go straight into the first chain. And when we attach it, because we want to continue the pattern, the way the pattern looks, we're going to go into the back loop only and then slip stitch. Okay, so through the next chain and then through the next back loop only and slip stitch. That's what you're going to do all the way down. And when you get to your last stitch, you'll go through both loops. You'll then have completed your Batwing sweater. Okay, here we are at our last stitch. We're going to go through the last chain and then through both loops of the stitch. And you will just cut your yarn, weave in all of your ends, and you've just completed your Batwing sweater. All right. Thank you everybody for watching Jolie Knots Crochet. Don't forget to share. Follow me on Facebook and tag me in your photos of your finished projects. I'd love to see the colors that you guys chose.